If you would like to check out all of my sounds, samples, and presets, all links are in the bio. Ladies and gentlemen, buckle up because we are about to be making an emotional yet powerful song just like ILLENIUM. And you can download all of these songs down below for free, and then some of these sounds have a lot of processing on them, so I was sure to export them with the processing already on just so it's way easier for you. So after watching hours and hours of ILLENIUM produce on the internet, on Twitch streams, I think I have a good grasp of how he makes his songs emotional and builds it up throughout the entire song, going from an emotional break to a very powerful drop. And I'm gonna do my best to try to take those elements of his songs into this one. And the main key of the emotional part is really the ambience, the chord progression, and the vocals that you use. They all play a big role in the overall emotion of the song early on. And the powerful part comes from having punchy drums, a lot of synth layers, and some vocal chops as well. And with that said, let's get started. So I laid down this emotional chord progression. It's very simple. Bass notes are really simple, but I like to get pretty simple bass notes down, get the perfect fifth on top of that, and then higher up we go, we can get more colors into the chords. And when you just mess around with different top melodies like that, just by using a few notes, you're gonna subconsciously get in these seventh chords, these sus2 chords and sus4 chords. I'm no complete expert on that, I'll be completely honest. However, you can create a lot more emotion by doing it this way. So here's that chord progression if I just did the normal triads. It sounds fine, but it just sounds kind of bland. So I like to space them out a little bit for the breaks, and when I'm spacing the notes out like this, it creates more of a minimal piano, and I like that sound. It's not a full, you're not getting all fingers on the keys, it's just minimal notes, and I like that going with vocals. I think it creates a nice minimal piano type of vibe. So I changed up that chord progression into a 4-5-6-1 progression. If you guys aren't familiar with that, I believe it's called the Nashville number system. But the 4-5-6-1 progression, the Chainsmokers use that all the time. And ILLENIUM did in his Anti-Hero remix. I think he had some kind of progression starting off, and then he transitioned into that dun 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 dun. That little 4-5-6-1 run-up is so good, especially for your build-ups, and I eventually did use that same progression for the drop as well, so it was a nice little transition from that first one. And to build energy, I added this soft pluck from Illuminati, and also a pretty clean respace for a little bit of low end. And then a build drum loop to get some momentum going. And I love this because it gets more energy going. It's almost double time because the plucks are in eighth notes. So it's going dun 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 dun, when before it was really slow and laid back. And it's also mixing in this electronic vibe because we didn't have too much electronic stuff happening before, but we're obviously going into an electronic drop. And the buildup is just a bridge between those two. And at this point, I just want to get enough inspiration to where I can start working on the drop. So I'll be coming back to all these parts later with vocals and a few more atmospheric elements that we'll add in a little bit later. But for right now, we're going to go on to the drop. So for the drop, I had ILLENIUM's Say It remix. I had that in mind for the chord stabs and like that, almost the half tempo type of drop. So let's find a fat kick, a clap, layered with an acoustic snare for a little bit more body, and then a tonal future bass snare for a little bit more tone. And altogether, these make a really nice full clap. And then I went for that simple 4-4 beat here. So kick, clap, kick, clap. So let's get our synth layers going. So I started with the main drop chord synth. This is pretty much the main layer. Then I added a bit of a higher layer, and then another bright layer. And I went for a nice gritty bass, and this bass in particular, I created it so you can have the nice wide high end, but also have a mono low end. You get those sub frequencies that are still mono, but with the capabilities of Vital, we can cut out the low frequencies of the wide layer. It could get a little confusing, but this is just a perfect all-in-one bass that I love using for future bass. And I wanted to give the bass a little bit more click, so I added this bass sample from Nitric, just going along with that same 8th note rhythm. And then I routed all of these sounds into the same exact bus. This is so I can have full control over that entire synth stack. Now, you could put these in separate buses, but in this case, I just put all of them into one bus, so I can sidechain them all at once, and if I want to add gate effects, filter effects later, I easily have that ability to do so. So now I just added some sidechain, and we're off. Now, I purposely left a little bit of space between sections because I knew I wanted to add some type of vocal chop and fill elements and just cool things that ILLENIUM always does in his songs. I knew I wanted to add those down the line, so I just kept those bare for right now. But more on that in just a little bit. And speaking of vocals, I first found this one on Splice.
Keeping you close, I don't know if what we had was real.
But I just couldn't get it to fit in the mix or just fit in the song with the chord progression. So I found this vocal from Splice, and I love how this one turned out.
Wherever you're not, I've got a shot, it's starting over.
Quick processing, I turned the formant down slightly in Stretch Pro just to make it a little deeper.
Wherever you're not, I've got a shot, it's starting over.
And then I added Nectar 3 for a bit of compression and reverb. And for the build-up vocals, I had to step in the booth and sing a little bit myself. It doesn't sound good by any means, but I just had to add that deep layer. I tried to pitch the other one down, it just didn't sound right, so I just recorded myself doing it. Pitched it like crazy. I pitched a formant down too, just so you couldn't even tell it was me. And it doesn't sound perfect, but I think it serves its purpose of adding that deeper layer to the vocals. And for these vocals, I chopped them up for the drop melody. Not really a drop melody, but just having those ambient vocals inside of the drop. And there's no clean cut way of doing this except just chopping up your favorite parts, chucking them in, and if they work, great, keep them in there, and if not, you can just throw them out and find new parts. So I took a cut from the first vocal and then also with that second main vocal as well, and together I think they worked very well for the little melody rhythm that I came up with. And the processing is Vocal Synth 2. I have the sub layer on, the super layer on. These add a sub layer and then a top layer. This is perfect for layering your vocal chops. This is by far my favorite part of Vocal Synth because you can easily just add those sub and top layers. This fills it out a ton. And then some distortion and EQ. With a bit of reverb as well, and I automated the reverb on and off just so I can have full control over it. So in those spaces, the reverb isn't overflowing into those parts. So I was happy with this foundation and the starting point of the drop. But now it was time to add more of the detail stuff and just have a little bit of fun with it. So I added a few guitar elements to give it a little bit of that funky feel. One was chopped from a Nitric guitar loop, a pre-made melody loop. And the other I just plugged in my guitar and played a couple of phrases, processed the hell out of it. And I just came up with a melody within those two little phrases I played. And automation is a massive tool to take advantage of when you're making songs like this. The main things are going to be volume for big pauses, filters to get that filtering sound sometimes, and some type of gate. So with automation, the main thing is to just listen to ILLENIUM songs, because the biggest thing you'll find is that things don't finish up how they started off. And I wanted to add an extra top lead synth layer. I love doing this. You just take a synth lead and then you highlight a certain note in that chord progression. You don't have to do it in the chord progression, but just find a note that works and play that throughout the entire drop. Throw that in the bus as well. And it's just, it can act as a nice tonal top layer to the big synth stack. Some crash cymbals on the kick to make it a little brighter. And I had this fill, it was a 96 BPM, I believe. I couldn't speed it up because it was too fast, and I couldn't go halftime with it because it was just way too slow. So I threw that into Slice X, chopped up the markers, and then from here you can just create a custom fill just like this. And you can just do a lot of creative stuff inside of the piano roll inside of Slice X. So that's exactly what I did here. So I chopped those up for some distorted drum fills, and then I played around with that bass shot a little bit as well. This gave us like a weird rhythm. It's not really ILLENIUM style, but I think it was like a nice little pausing moment. I liked it, so I just kept it. And lastly, for no reason, I went for this like Z. I don't even know if it's Z, like a little Z drum break where I went bum 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 bum. I don't know, I heard it in my head and I'm like, I have to do this. But this gave a little bit of variation, and hopefully it throws you off guard a little bit when you listen to it, because you just didn't really expect it. That was my main goal there at the very least. So not really ILLENIUM style, but I just wanted to do something a little bit different. And very quickly, back to the breaks. We're gonna have a lot of ambient stuff, so vinyl crackles, ambient synths. And I have these small little ear candy percussion loops in here as well. And some atmospheric elements created from the vocals.
I've got a shot, it's starting over wherever.
And some more things in the build up. We have some risers. So basically I took the soundscape of ILLENIUM, got halfway through, I'm like, okay, this sounds like ILLENIUM, and then I just went my own direction with it a little bit while keeping that same ILLENIUM vibe. Let me know what you guys think of this below, and let's go through the full playthrough.
Wherever you're not, I've got a shot, I've got a shot, it's starting over. Wherever you're not, I've got a shot.